I was just kind of concerned about some of the visitors policies that have come up. Parents have been getting emails that parents who do not have a vaccination are not allowed to go past the office. Found that interesting because we allow for teachers to have a negative COVID test and other staff, and that is acceptable. So I'm just kind of concerned and wondering why Sycamore 427 doesn't think they can accept a negative COVID test from a parent. If the true concern is that the test dates or results could be altered, as one parent was told that, does that mean that parents who want to partner with our wonderful teachers and be involved in their children's education that our tax dollars pay for are considered by the school board to be liars? That is in essence what the board is saying. We trust Sycamore 427 with our kids, but the board doesn't trust us with a piece of paper. You don't concern yourself with verifying every single signature on a permission slip, but you're worried that the date might be false on your test. Trust goes both ways. How do we know that the information, that the funding, that the financials that you are presenting us are true if you don't believe that we are giving you is true? Do we know how much the construction really costs? Where their expenses really are? Should we be doing more FOIA requests to see those? Because if what we present to you as a negative COVID test cannot be believed, why should we believe what you're saying? If the safety protocols in the school are sufficient so that non-vaccinated children are protected from non-vaccinated children, that non-vaccinated staff are protected from non-vaccinated children, that non-vaccinated children are protected from non-vaccinated staff, and non-vaccinated staff are protected from non-vaccinated staff, it should be sufficient for non-vaccinated parents who want to participate in their children's field trip or their party or help out with other school activities. The protocol should be universal and not discriminatory. In 2 short months, we've gone from mask optional to, oh my gosh, no unvaccinated parents can pass the office. So I'm very confused as to if the board has an actual logical reasoning here or if it's just kind of like following the fun. So, thank you.
Thank you. Someone else want to address the question?
My name is Lisa Shao. I live on Green Circle here in Sycamore. I just had a couple of quick points. I was also going to address on the visitor and volunteer policy, but first, just for recording for family, parent purposes, and everything, the first thing I just wanted to say, like, families and parents, if you're ever questioning things, just from the very beginning, know that you are not alone in questioning and wanting to seek clarification and whatnot. I think everyone here would agree that asking questions, seeking that clarification through emails, through phone calls, coming here and speaking out and whatnot is great and very, very much welcome. So I know we have a lot of families and I have friends that are totally and completely freaked out to come here. For one, because they feel like their kids are going to get targeted if they say something. How sad is that, right? 2, they feel like they are going to get targeted and placed like with a target on their back to say all of a sudden they're bad people. But I just want to say again to families and friends and everybody that you're not alone and it's okay. All right, that was the first thing. Second, the volunteer and visitor policy also has me questioning things as well, and I realize that there's some people that don't know what it is. I agree with everything that Diana just had shared as well. But here's how it reads for those that don't know. In an effort to maintain the safest learning environment possible for our students and staff, we will be limiting the number of visitors and volunteers to the building at this time. As part of this commitment, we will be requiring all visitors who enter the building past the office during the school day to be vaccinated. If you are asked to be a volunteer or visitor, please know that you will have to submit proof of your vaccination status to the office prior to entering the building or volunteering at the event. So again, you have to present a card in order to come in. I mean, you have to present your papers to help your child volunteer and spend time with them. It's just so sad. Following the science, we now know that parent A, who chooses to get vaccinated, can still contract the virus, they can still transmit the virus. So they can come in and work with the children, and that could be spread. But parent B, who maybe chooses not to, or actually even just doesn't even disclose their status, they are no longer welcome to come into the building to work with their children. It is pure discrimination. Let's see. But and again, I just feel like it's so unfair and so sad. We start these moments to be with your kids. Third, this is just my opinion, but it dispels so a lot of the decisions made have been based on what our district has been told to do. So back, I can't remember which meeting it was, but one of our board representatives, I think it was you, Mr. Nelson, you were going to bring it up at the state board to put it on as a discussion for like all of them to give more power back to the individual districts. And so I'm just curious as to looking for an update on that, and if it's been brought up and where we stand in that, because I'm totally ready for our district to start making decisions based on our whole community versus the entire state versus having all these outside entities tell us what to do. So thanks for your time.
Anyone else would like to address the board this evening? Well, thank you for your comments, and we'll take those.
Oh, I think there's.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Carrie Zimmer, I was the one who was at the PTO meeting Monday and was speaking with the principal, asking him why the difference. He did tell me that it is part of because they cannot, meaning board, I'm assuming, they cannot check the dates, make sure that no one is forging signatures and things like that on these papers. I proceeded to say that what is the difference between, the teachers that come in and do this and that aren't vaccinated and us as parents. Obviously, the teachers have a lot more to lose, as in their jobs, if they forge a paper to where we're just a party, so why would we forge a paper? I just want to say I've never missed a party in my daughter's 11 years. This is her last year in elementary. I would hate to start that now. And also, we had, at our PTO meeting, we had 6 people there, and I was one of the 6, plus the principal. So if you want to talk about volunteers, and now you're going to take away volunteers, I run 4 committees there because no one else will do it. So if I can't go into school and do these committees and have to give them to who? Because no one's stepping up. So volunteers are an issue, so don't take those people away that are trying to do everything for our kids. Don't take that away from them too. Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
My name is Cassandra Spurs. I'm out on Old State Road. I have 2 children in Southeast School. I just learned of the policy changes today. I'm going to piggyback on the other parents that basically said it's discrimination. In essence, you have banned the parents of students who are not vaccinated. And I'm not sure at what point you thought that you were allowed to ban me from my child's school, that you were allowed to tell me I could not be involved with plays, programs, volunteering in his classroom, any of that. I'm not sure where that power trip came from. It is 100% discrimination. Whether you are vaccinated or not vaccinated, that's a personal choice. And to come to the school and say, nope, you can't come because you're not vaccinated, that's absolutely ludicrous. And the idea that you're trying to convince us that it's because of health. Tomorrow morning, my 2 boys are going to bring 3 grandparents and 2 uncles to a book fair. The book fair that will allow K through 5 to come through with their aunts, uncles, grandparents. So to tell me that I can't go because it's not safe, but tomorrow, all of the children, all of their extended family will be together, but at 8:30, when school starts, COVID's starting, so everybody's got to leave if you're not vaccinated. That's absolutely, it doesn't make any sense. COVID is not a 9 to 5, so if that was the true meaning and reasoning, it would be across the board. It doesn't make any sense. So I'm just very confused, and I hope someone can explain at some point why parents are being banned from the school that are not vaccinated, and who thought they had the authority to do so. That is my concern. Who is thinking that they have the authority to tell a parent, you cannot participate with your child, you cannot participate with your child's school? Those are the answers that I'm hoping to receive tonight. Thank you.
Anyone else? we have constraints on us that come from the legislature, that come from the governor, that come from the health department, and we find them at certain times to be very frustrating as well. But we are trying to live as best we can within those mandates. Next item is communications, correspondence, informational items, letters and newsletters. FOIA requests, we have one. Have all been responded to? Committee reports?
No appointment zoning yesterday, and we are starting our first grant cycle of the year for SEF, Education Foundation. We have our next committee meeting Thursday morning, and coming Monday, we'll be in person. Progress. Money from the working group and other investments.
We had a Spartan Senate meeting, first Spartan Senate meeting. Tim Carlson kicked it off. Did an excellent job, in my opinion. I got a really great opportunity to sit in and watch that happen and unfold. And basically what happened was we had a series of stakeholders, parents, teachers, students, all sitting around the circle in the library at the high school and discussed a pre-prepared agenda of items, of which the primary topic was dress code. There seemed to be resounding consensus, and it's my understanding that the Spartan Senate at a later point in the year will present that consensus and among other items to the board for review. But it was really a neat, speaking especially to what we've got on the agenda tonight, how much involvement was available for students and parents and teachers in a two-way town hall dialogue style. And a lot of times I think what parents and teachers and stakeholders might expect, or parents and stakeholders might expect in a board meeting is that town hall style, when in reality that's not happening because it's a board meeting, so it's one-way dialogue. But this Spartan Senate meeting proved to be a really great town hall style, two-way dialogue opportunity. And so a lot of parents and teachers and students voiced their specific opinions about this agenda. Again, it being dress code, and there was one other item we didn't get to address that we talked about at the next meeting. So great opportunity. If you haven't heard of it or aren't aware of it, you should check out the Spartan Senate. I'll be there at the next Spartan Senate meeting, and that date will be posted. Tim Carlson's got that information when that next date will be released for that meeting. That's the way it's supposed to work. Oh yeah, really well run, right on time, started, right on and it ended. Thanks for having us. Good stuff. Other committee reports? IASB resolution. Oh, I skipped one. Oops.
Nice try. For the members of the audience that are here tonight, the board members know this, but for the members of the audience here tonight, school board members are offered opportunities for professional development and professional growth. It happens in a variety of ways. It can happen face-to-face when COVID doesn't restrict us from doing that. It can happen virtually. It happens at conferences. The Illinois Association of School Boards is broken into divisions throughout the state. We have the Mishawaka division of the IASB. So there are events held within the division as well. These are non-paid jobs, so people volunteer for them, but in order to really be at your best, you have to go through professional growth opportunities, just like a lot of our staff do as well. So from time to time, our board members do that, and as you do that, you rack up points, so to speak. And two of our board members were recently recognized by IASB as master board members. If I remember correctly, this is renewing your master school board member status. So Steve Nelson and Jim Dombeck have already been recognized as master board members. What this means is that they have accumulated enough additional credits to maintain that master board status. It's not just something that you earn once and then you keep it forever. It's something that you have to maintain. So this time it's my pleasure to recognize Stephen and Jim, and I'm just going to say this right up front. And Kathy can vouch for me on this. they sent a certificate for Steve and a plaque for Jim. I don't know what, don't blame me, I'm just, so please join me in congratulating,
Now we'll go to IASB resolution. Yeah, this is your bill.
So as Superintendent Wilder said, we're in the Kishwaukee Division. I happen to be on the executive board of the Kishwaukee Division as the resolutions chair. Any school district can put forth a resolution each year. They put out multiple ones. In this particular case, one district submitted 10 different resolutions. And those are vetted by ISB legal staff. And they are brought forward, and we meet usually the first week of August every year in Central Illinois, in Springfield this past year. And we sit down and go through all of these after they've been vetted, and we have an open dialogue, debate, and discussion. Any district that submits can come and present as well. You're not required to necessarily, but you can. This was the longest one I have been a part of. I've been doing the resolutions for 6 years now. We had 25 different resolutions. So that meeting started at 5:30 p.m. and finished at about 12:30 in the morning. And there are some that were reaffirmations of belief statements and things like that, but there were others that were much more contentious and required a lot of debate and discussion. They were all printed out here on the website as well. So as your IASB delegate at the annual conference, I'll be helping to run the session, but I also have a vote as our board delegate. So I got to express opinions, my opinions as we went through the debate and discussion. But what we need to do here is as the board decide which ones we agree or disagree with, because that's how I will vote. We have on the board, not me. When I'm there at the annual conference, going through all 25, which we hope some will be on consent. So you'll see in here in the write-ups that there's the actual resolution, what that district's rationale or argument was for the case, and then at the end, the rationale of the committee/IASB, and then it's always been listed as a do adopt or do not adopt. And so occasionally, and you'll see in the notes here, we may make recommendations to change language or adjust language. If the recipient or the sponsor of the resolution agrees to that, then we vote on that as well, and it will be reflected in the notes that were in the actual document. So I can run through each one, if that's the easiest, or if there are specific ones that people would like to talk about and not others, we can do that.
I suppose if there are board members who have opinions that are opposite of what the resolution is, we can probably talk about those first.
Or we just kind of run through each one.
I think if you can run through each one quickly, I think
I'm not going to read everything. It'll take a long
Just
time.
read the.
Read the title. I can give you a little bit of background on it and what the recommendation is. We just started with resolution 1. The actual first one that they had was actually withdrawn. So pre-service teacher education and licensure and literacy. Essentially what they're asking for is that any teacher going forward would have at least one class required with literacy, which is actually not a requirement at this time. There was debate back and forth on the teacher shortage, or strings on or not, strings on. But ultimately, the committee, which is 21 divisions voted to recommend to adopt that resolution, which was submitted by Applecut SD 37. Issues with the recommendation to adopt. Good. I'm going to keep track of my motion. More controversy. Number 2, student safety and protection plan. This has been up, I think, 5 years in a row now, in different versions. It comes from Mercer County. It is a resolution that would allow, not require, but would allow school districts, if they so choose under local control, to allow staff or teachers to have a weapon in the school. You can imagine how contentious the discussion has been. Give you the background on just a little bit. Like I said, it's been through several years. The last 2 years, including this year, there was a recommendation to adopt based on the majority vote, primarily because of the issue of local control. Where we sit, we have a police department in Sycamore, we also have a county seat. The police officer can be at a school in a matter of seconds and minutes. In Mercer County, which is kind of Blackhawk Division, so central southwest towards the Mississippi, they have schools in 3 schools in 4 different towns. Even if you're driving 70 or 80 miles an hour, it may take you 25 minutes to get to that building. And they have had other approaches. They've been trying to get SROs. They can't find anybody to hire. They won't stay. They can only get one. A number of different things. They would like the option for their district. They initially started with everybody should do this, and that was really a poor approach. They're looking at it as local control. No one has to do it. We would like to do it. We like support in doing that. As you can imagine, many people said, we feel your pain, but we don't think it's a good idea. Ultimately, the recommendation from the overall committee was do adopt based on local control. So I can support that or not support that. Or is it the board?
I like the idea of local control. I'm not suggesting I think it should be done in our schools, but I think that it may make sense for certain schools. I think local control should be advocated for. So I would say do it.
One each.
I've been pretty consistent in supporting that Mike's position as well since this issue came up 4 or 5 years ago, so I've also
I would disagree.
Okay, 2 no's and 2 yeses.
I would disagree as well. I'm all for local control, and I think it's important, but I don't think guns in school are really answers.
Right. And that's where I landed on myself. I, again, very much appreciate the local control aspect. Because we continue to take that away from us, but this is a different issue, so one new one opposed that. Number 3, this is probably an easy answer. Someone suggested that, and it happens about every other year, that school board members should be compensated for their time. This was almost, other than the sponsor of the bill, a unanimous vote to do not adopt that policy. And I would guess that everybody's on board with that. Looking to be compensated. Number 4, board member child care reimbursement. This one is specific to just child reimbursement for like daycare or evening care to attend a meeting or to attend trainings. They look at it as an impediment for some people to serve on the public board because they are a single parent or they have other issues that preclude them. And there is, this past year, legislation that was passed for campaigns and things like that, that you are allowed to use campaign money to pay for watching your child while you're on the campaign trail. So precedent had been set. So this actually was almost unanimously in favor of supporting that particular piece for reimbursement, just like you'd be reimbursed if you went to a conference or something like that on behalf of the board. it was recommended as you adopt. So I'm asking you to agree with that or not?
Was there any discussion on the potential for abuse of that or setting caps on the amount of reimbursement per hour? I mean, I could just see somebody saying, oh yeah, I'm employing my mom to watch the kids for $80 an hour. So here's the bill.
Right. That was discussed, and they said obviously when legislation would be pushed forward, there had to be parameters and guidelines associated with legislation. They didn't propose a cap or anything. They didn't propose a set cap or limit. They just said it should be within a reasonable amount as part of their recommendation. So,
It seems like a slippery slope to me, and it's too close to the general compensation category that I can't get behind that one. It seems to me if you're going to be compensated for childcare, then adding on mileage, food, and everything, just why stop there?
Right. One now.
Well, we want to encourage people to run for the board if child care is an issue. I certainly understand where Eric's coming from, but, it's hard to get people to run for the board. So what would be the difference? If we have child care, I'd say yes.
One each.
I would vote no.
I like the idea of the equity that it might allow by adopting it. I also see the cons to it, so it's a really hard decision for me, but if there were parameters set forth, I'd say adopt it.
I'm okay with it because there's already been a precedent set in the legislation we have to put around it.
It's a tough one. I see both sides of the issue. I would think if it helps people to run for the school board, it's probably okay to adopt.
Number 5, remote virtual school board open meeting. This one, the numbers here aren't the same numbers I have on here. So they were looking for the option of being able to do this when you don't have the option to be physically present, so they can inform, which we have had to do on very specific occasions that someone may call into a meeting so that we have a forum to make a decision. They want to formalize that, and I believe, yes, it was recommended to do adopt.
We already have rules to do it by telephone.
We do it by telephone, so being able to do it virtually is Number 6, reorganization of the board. This was dropping it from taking it from 28 days to 40 days to allow ample time to canvass the vote and not force people to have special board meetings in the last minute to try and make that happen. So giving them a little bit of flexibility, depending on when the election falls on the board meeting, and how quickly they canvass the vote. Some counties are quicker than others. Okay?
I think it's a good idea.
Indigenous people's curriculum inclusion basically says our history does not do ample justice to the history portion related to Indigenous peoples in the United States, and that they should put a resolution together to support including that as part of required curriculum in American history teachings. I can tell you, since I'm sitting on the inclusionary American History Commission for ISD right now, that it's already been discussed as one of the groups that would come out of that curriculum anyway. So, kind of a moot point in the sense that it's already being discussed as part of groups that would be included in the inclusive American history curriculum going forward. But if you feel differently, you can talk.
Is this like a superset of requirements over what is already the Common Core curriculum, or do I have?
So the legislature, they charged ISD with having this commission to make recommendations for social studies curriculum, which is supposed to roll out for next school year. starting in 2022-23, as far as the state guidelines. And
So it'll become part of the course.
it'll become part of that core curriculum. Now, there's a lot of argument on that committee that we're supposed to be done by the end of December, that between my first meeting 2 weeks ago, one last Friday, the end of December is not near enough time to put together a proper inclusive American history curriculum. And I think most of us would probably agree with that, but they're trying to meet the time frames of what they've set for updating social studies core. Like I said, this just says we should be doing more Indigenous people. And I don't disagree with that. It doesn't really address much of it. But it's kind of already going to be covered in this commission. So,
It's another reason to say yes.
yeah, kind of.
Does it seem harmful? Why wouldn't we want to learn more?
Right.
Except that it requires the removal of something else.
Correct. All right, moving along, science and reading curriculum. And their K-5 grade level curriculum, including a depth of phonemic education. We teach every student proficient reading skills and include reading comprehension, fluency, vocabulary, acquisition. Goes through all of those pieces. The district's rationale feels that right now that's not expressed and that it's not as robust a curriculum as it should be. The resolutions committee's rationale was the resolution committee weighed the content of the proposed resolution, whether we received two similar proposed resolutions previously in the meeting, so we had a couple of others that were curriculum-based, like the one we just talked about. And it was noted that the previous resolution has required changes to local curriculum in contrast to changes in teacher preparation. The committee agreed that the district presenting the resolution with phonics is certainly important, but the lack of flexibility in the resolution language, the way it's been written, gave the majority of the committee concerns, so they recommended do not adopt. And they said come back next year with some more, some broader language. It's not so hand-cutting the teachers.
Talk about local control.
Right. That's local control.
This is anti-local control.
Okay. So it's the recommendation is do not adopt. So we support the do not adopt. Let's see. Number 10, cannabis sales. No, we're not going to sell cannabis in school. That's not what it's about. What they're saying is they want to share. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't. I'm sorry. Oops. That's even how to put that. Sorry. Health and sex education curriculum. This was basically all about let the school districts decide what they're going to teach. This came from the same Mercer County district, and they want local control to decide what we can and can't teach, or what we would like to be taught as far as sex education. And the committee did recommend do adopt for that. Let that be local control, not dictated by the state. Everybody on board with that? Okay, so that would be a yes, we support that as well. Then on to cannabis sales, sorry. This is about gaining or gathering income for education in general from cannabis sales, because they are obviously doing well and growing, and everybody wants to share the money. So keeping that in mind, this was discussed, and the recommendation was to adopt, but keep in mind, it's with the precursor note, so that it doesn't happen the same way that the lottery did, where they said, fine, we'll give you a portion of the lottery money, but then we're just going to take that out of the money we already give you anyway, so it's cost neutral to them. And it could only be if it's not going to be that way. And even though the legal personnel in the room, the people that do the lobbying with the legislature said, you know, the money that's there, the vast majority has already been dedicated to this, and this. So who's going to give some back? Nobody is. So it's very highly unlikely that it'll happen. We debated on whether even bothering with the discussion, but it's a funding source. Maybe we should get a small share of it, as long as it doesn't get cost neutral as how on something else. So they had a committee, and they did recommend doing that. So, thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's great, but I agree that it should have some guidelines so they don't do what they did with the lottery.
Lots of money out, no
Which is
chance
just,
to get anything new.
put the lottery money in and take whatever funding money they had already allocated.
Right.
Back out into the general fund.
Yeah. Number 11, this was a group that all came from Champaign Unit 4, there's a district that included like 9 or 10 of them, and although all of them had some definite merit, there's only so much in the budget to lobby legislature, and our state, by evidence and by reputation, is known as a highly legislative state. So there is a great deal of legislation that gets passed, particularly in this last session, which veto session starts in a week. The thought process behind this is there's only so many resources that they have, and they don't spend a lot of time lobbying the federal government for things when they do it, but it's on a very limited basis. The vast majority is trying to manage all the stuff that's coming out of Springfield, mandate, unfunded, taking away local control, those types of things. And as a whole, committee said we'd rather focus our attentions here at home than on the federal government, hence the recommendation to adopt, am I right one? Yeah, that's the wrong one, no. Do not adopt that one, to focus their attention on that one. That was the rationale, that's what came out of the whole discussion. So we can support that, or we can say no, go after some more federal stuff.
I understand the rationale. I think it's really too bad. I get it. I get why you're not going to do that.
I think, well, it's the one area we might disproportionately benefit over Chicago, which is rare to say in Illinois.
I guess I don't see the logic in,
Trying.
well, in not trying, right?
Right.
I mean, especially when, as you come down, there's a couple federal funding resolutions that they recommend do not adopt. And their rationale is because we're too thin to lobby. But then the landscaping federal funding, they recommend to adopt. So that doesn't make any sense to me. That's very incongruous.
I agree.
And so I would disagree. I would say that we should adopt, and we should try to get additional federal funding, and we should fight for that. The federal funding that we get is really minuscule at this point, and so it would be nice to have some additional federal funding, and not just for landscaping, but for all these federal and private funds.
Right. So that goes right into the next one, which is, trying to get money for electric school buses, charging stations, and federal funding. The vast majority, here was the same argument to a certain degree, but then a lot of them also said, hey, as it stands right now, our routes, all this downstairs, our routes are so long, they're not going to hold the charge, and we don't have charging stations down here, to the extent that Chicago and the suburbs or what have you have. So again, not a focus for them, so their vote dominated the committee. That's also do not adopt.
It's too bad because they could get the charging stations with the funding, so.
Right.
Again, I would adopt that. I would recommend.
I don't see a problem with adopting it either.
And then it carries right into the landscaping. And they tried to tie this a little bit towards using it for science curriculum, doing some things that are sustainable, bioswales and things like that, tying to all the science curriculum as an educational component, not just making it nicer, things like that. Geared more towards that.
We could do that with the other proposals. So I agree. Do with that.
Everybody good with that? Okay.
Doesn't look federal, I don't know. I guess without getting too political, maybe it's just a small government thing, I'm not asking for federal money for anything.
We get such a small amount of money right now, but so
Maybe that's because we don't have.
you don't get it, right? Number 14 was expanding broadband internet access. That's listed as do adopt, and I don't think you anybody would argue with trying to improve that service.
I'm all for that.
So trying to get some more infrastructure money to have all school districts with broadband access. So that I would say we would support. 15 is child safety gun storage. So this is not about anything in school. This is about essentially allowing for control of how guns are safely stored in your home, which was the crux of the argument between those in favor and those not in favor. And you can see it was recommended as a do not adopt. And that's primarily because the majority of the downstate votes said, don't come into my house and tell me what I need to do. It's not the school district's responsibility. That was their argument.
I agree.
I agree with that to a certain extent too, but as a partner in a security-based firm and seeing active shooter events and how the kids get a hold of some of those guns, they get right out of their family gun family. So if they're not stored properly, that can be an issue. That was the crux of the argument. So it was do not adopt because we shouldn't be telling people what to do or not. That was the argument that was that's why it's a do not adopt.
Well, yeah, I guess I understand both sides of that argument too, but if it were up to me, and those guns have a chance of winding up in one of our schools, I would much rather see that we support locks on the guns, so that we could eliminate potential damages and help guarantee the safety of our students. I think I would say that we should adopt it.
I'm a no.
I guess I would know on that one as well, because it's the school's role, or it's ISB's role in agreement with their.
You agree with the do not adopt?
Correct.
You agree that we should be having some disagree with the do not adopt? So we're split.
You won't vote.
I don't have to, conference until November, right? So I can leave this one down with James, let James weigh in and he's there. Yeah, there you go. Okay, school code review. I'm going to tell you, don't adopt it. Go with the recommendation. What they did is they want to go through and update the school code, which is nothing wrong with. There are a lot of security pieces in the school code, no doubt. I deal with it all the time. But if you're going to ask the legislature to set up a committee to do that, that is the biggest can of worms you've ever asked to do.
Giving them carte blanche.
Carte blanche to do whatever they want.
Tell us
If you want to come back and say, hey, let's talk about these 10 items, or these 5 items, or these 13 items, and update or remove and add them, that's fine. But general carte blanche, no, I highly recommend we go with the constitutional amendment on school funding. Again, they recommend that we do adopt it, even though they think it's unlikely that it's going to happen. Put something specifically in there. They can't get it open for anything else, so we can go along with that. I don't think it's going to unfortunately. Pretty close. These are reaffirmation of existing positions. These will probably be on the consent agenda. So unless you have any specific, they deal with charter schools, those schools very specific to, they're general for the state, they apply to the whole state, but they're really driven by the district that sponsors them and has a charter school taking advantage of their public funding in Woodward, up by Kearney, Illinois. So those 18 and 19 are both about reaffirming that, it's already been passed previously multiple times, as well as 20, so that there are better guidelines if a charter school has to be set up in your community. So unless you have any recommendations, any real problem with those, we're just reaffirming those positions. So that's 18, 21 is just another reaffirmation of proper funding for special education programs. So I don't think we have any issues getting better funding for special education. And again, we're not writing the law here, it's just that they're going to allow me with this position statement in place, all of these, that this is where the school board is standing on this issue. Please do this, please do that.
Right, nothing may come of this.
You never know. That's the statement. That's what we're lobbying for. 22 is prepare all students to succeed. Succeed by cultivating learning. To that end, as years, school districts consider adopting a policy encouraging students to complete assignments within a reasonable time frame, even after the due date, by developing guidelines and outgrades and the student late assignments. So basically, having some kind of credit recovery, having accountability in place, what they're talking about, formalizing that process in the belief statements. So it's again kind of a reaffirmation of that belief statement. Physical and mental health of students, number 23. And it's an amended belief statement. So we've already had stuff in there for many, many years relative to this. And these documents are sent to all legislators as well, so they're familiar with it. The resolutions committee rationale is this amendment expands and clarifies the current belief statement, number 8, in your little Gatsby and your board member, to include mental, physical, and dental examinations in addition to the already stated vision screening. The committee agreed that the amendment is in alignment with the Illinois state law and improvement from the belief statement. So we wanted to include some additional dental and physical examinations beyond this full screening. So some semantic change there.
Anything else on USD resolutions? We'll move on to the next item, Assistant Superintendent for HR, Educational Program.
It's exciting to be back in the building, or another new building. You can see a lot of North Grove staff here, but Mr. Janish is going to present on all the great things happening and some of the challenges they're facing. So, welcome, Mr. Janish.
I'm going to get the light, so you can see a little better. Okay, I stand up here and try to project so everybody can hear. First off, thanks to the board for joining us tonight, all the audience members, and especially to our North Grove family out there. So thank you guys very much for joining us. A few things we want to present on. So first off, some exciting things. I think it's about a year ago, we were in board meetings that looked very different, right? We were talking about whether or not in-person learning was safe or hybrid, or whether we need to stay remote. I can't tell you a year later how pleased I am that this is the position we're in, and I think it's very quickly for us to forget that. Kids are back in the building, it's been amazing. I know that this year has been filled with different challenges, but I would take this year over last year 100 times over. So great to see kids back in in-person learning and that collaborative learning that takes place on a daily basis. So picture on the right is some of our 10th graders learning the different moon phases. I think that's this is DeVito's class right there. And then the picture on the left is our kids back in special. And one of the things at the elementary level that I think we all really struggled with last year was just how is the best way to get our students to go to special on a daily basis. And obviously they had to do it remotely last year because of the short time frame. So having all of our kids back in specials this year has been fantastic, especially for our kids down in PE class. The other thing that's very exciting, obviously, for this year is just bringing back all of those student engagement things. What we really talked about
about trying to do as a staff is continue to do all of those things that makes kids excited about coming to school. If we have to do them a little different, if we have a little different spin on them, that's okay. We want to try to do as many of them as possible again, so the school year feels like a school year again. So picture on the far right is Open the Magic Day. It's a celebration of picture books and the joy reading can bring. I think that's Mrs. DeVito's, or Mrs. Doty's room, and then some of Mrs. Wheeler's room on that day as well. On the left, we've got our principals for the day. So we did the SCF gathering out at the farm. These were the students who won principal for the day, and a couple of them also won it for doing our summer reading program. So they got to hang with me for the whole day. The picture on the left is probably their favorite thing. We always do it on the same day that we do a fire alarm, and they get to pull the fire alarm, which is a really big thrill for an elementary student to be able to actually pull a fire alarm. So they really like that. We took our first field trip in 18 months, and this is a picture of our second graders who took a field trip downtown, and they did the history walk in Sycamore on the right, and on the left, we welcome back the Sycamore Fire Department, who did presentations for our students during Fire Safety and Fire Prevention Week, and I think that's for our kindergartners there. The other thing we're excited about is our wait time. So I know the board has been supporting that, and we've been putting staff in place. I gave a longer presentation about wait time last night to our PTO, and Chris Wren was able to join us for that. So that's very exciting. Our picture on the right is our one of our reading specialists working with a group of students, and on the left is our math specialist. And every single kid is in a group getting customized learning 5 days a week. So that has been very exciting for us. Management of COVID. I know it seems like an odd thing to have this excitement, but the truth of it is, if we do that well, we get to function. And we've been managing that well. Limited number of students needing to be quarantined, even when positive cases do show up in the school. We made the adjustment here at the school with folding tables in the lunchroom to get all the kids to 5 feet. And so when we have had positive cases come through, instead of taking out 6 students at a time in the lunchroom, it's 1 or 2. And the teachers have done an amazing job with classrooms. So again, we know since we're 100% masked in the building, as long as we stay masked and 3 feet apart, it gives us that option to quarantine less students. We can do the test to stay inside that range. We have had very few students need to be quarantined, even when we do have a positive case that ends up inside the building. So that has been success. And then staff engagement. We have a lot of them here, and I kind of think the world of this group. I know I'm pretty biased on that. And I told them last year, I said, that was the hardest year ever. I think we shared a kind of an emotional last day, and I said, this was a really hard year, but I said, there's nobody I would rather have done that with than them. And this year they've come back with a different set of challenges, but they have been fantastic. And I appreciate them, and they actually know that, because we talk about that quite a bit. So, great group. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention my elementary admin team, and I know you've heard a lot about it. But we met today for about an hour and a half, and our agenda is jam-packed, and we march as one, and we stay together, and we talk about things to improve our district constantly. And the other 4 elementary principals, along with myself, they're a true partnership in this that I appreciate, and it helped me tremendously, and it helped all of our students and our teachers. So I definitely want to tell them, big thank you for everything. Well, we have some challenges as well this year, but our little friend over to the right, Nora, gives us a thumbs up to let us know everything's going to be okay. All right, she's our little ray of sunshine, and she'll help us. So first thing is the nursing and office workload. You do not want to be in an elementary school on Monday morning. Our parents have done a great job, and I so appreciate the honesty of our parents to call in every COVID symptom and then just say, what do I need to do? By them doing that, it helps keep us all safe. But it is very busy. On my chair over there, you'll see the folder that I took, the binder I took from our health staff. That is every student who's been put into protocol this year and had to be checked before they could come back to school. I think we've done something like 1,100 tests on students this year. The workload on Monday looks something like this. The phones start ringing in about 7, and it doesn't stop ringing until about 9. At the end of that, there are about 30 students who need to be cleared all the way through protocol, which means one of our nursing staff people have to talk to their parents, get all of their symptoms, go through what's going on, and give them a plan. And every plan looks a bit different based on the scenario for the families. Sometimes Mrs. Schreiber-Berners is on the phone till 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock at night, just getting through everyone. Parents have been very patient. They understand that process. But it is daunting. It is a big workload. It's a lot on Cindy, it's a lot on Kim, it's a lot on Jenny and Stacy, but they continue to do a great job. We also continue to face different shortages, right? Like bus drivers, which I know the district has been working on, staffing hires such as paraeducators, custodians, etc. Even some certified positions like our tech positions we have been able to get filled. And then supplies, right? Like we don't have toner. We're running out of toner for copy machines. That's a problem. We do need those items. Lunch trays. We ran out of lunch trays a couple weeks ago, and the district is constantly finding creative solutions. So the shortages are not only in people, but also things are really starting to just it's always like on the back of your mind, like how are we going to work through this? Shipping things has become more expensive, delays, and then of course some of the items that we had purchased previously, we're noticing, especially like flexible seating for classrooms, it's up about 25%. So we're definitely seeing all that, and it impacts us just like it's impacting the rest of the world. WIN implementation, although it is a positive, it's also a big initiative. And it's one that has to be supported appropriately for teachers and honestly for our administrative team as well. We have to do a great job with that, and we'll touch on that a little bit more later. We are also monitoring student writing. I think that was one area of student learning that was greatly impacted by our COVID learning environment. Students just did not get the same type of writing instruction we would like to provide, especially writing stamina. It's something that we have noticed and that we already had to address. We talked about it as a staff. Embedded writing in as much of our instructional day as possible, not just in writing, but in all parts of our day. In math, let's write our thinking down. Let's write it on our whiteboard. Let's share it with our friends. Before we share it, let's write the sentence. Embedding as much writing as possible into the day to try to make those gains happen. We also saw a larger summer academic dip than what we would have liked to have seen. I will say, looking at our MAP scores at the end of the year, and I can speak specifically as our building, but then also a little bigger picture. At the building level, we saw some of the highest MAP scores we've ever seen at the end of last year. Kids did learn during our remote learning, during our hybrid learning, and then back to our in-person learning. They did learn. They did amazing things, and we saw the highest MAP numbers we've ever seen in the building. However, we also saw the biggest dip in the summer that we've ever seen this year. So our kids have come back. We definitely have some holes, and I'm really happy that we have our WIN in place to be able to support student learning. And then lastly, SEL, if you want to think of it as definitely our social emotional learning piece, but social problem solving for kids. Kids are out of practice on how to solve problems, and we've definitely been doing a lot of coaching at all of the buildings on social emotional learning, social problem solving, and frustration tolerance. I think students are very used to being in their own homes or very close to their parents, and honestly, maybe not even being in close proximity to other students. That has all started to change again, and they definitely need some extra help with all those things. But again, Nora reminds us, it's going to be okay. You got this, right? Nothing is easy in life. You're going to go just prior to March, when COVID did set in, our building finalized our new mission statement. So I think the board's familiar with the fact that I have been talking to the students at North Grove, and our staff has been talking to the students at North Grove about we don't want it to be a good school, but we want it to be a great school. Again, based a lot on some of the work of Collins in Good to Great. Really love that book as a leader. And also based on the work of Dr. Hattie and his visible learning research, which is one of the most, if not the most referenced educational research study ever done. And Mr. Hattie, Dr. Hattie, did a meta-analysis of all of the studies being done by educators and put together this analysis. And basically what he figured out was there are some indicators that really impact student learning, and there are some indicators that don't really impact student learning. So he made the visible learning research continuum here. And a couple of those things at the top, those are the most impactful things that schools can do, that educators can do to impact student learning. Top one, teacher efficacy. Teachers believing and knowing that they matter. Knowing that they are the major factor in student learning. Not where the student comes from, not the student's previous educational history, not the other factors that impact them, but the teacher themselves are the most important factor in student learning. Second factor there is high expectations for students, student expectations. The third one is response to intervention, a response plan for students when they are struggling to learn. Those top three things, those are three things that we talk about all the time. And it's embedded in this work of North Grove is a great school where people matter. So we turned that into a mission statement, and then below we turned it into a vision statement, which is used more by our staff. The kids know the top line, the staff know the bottom part. And we focus on those areas of engaging students, professional learning communities, which is that collaborative work we do, the use of technology to impact what we do. That then goes into the good to great. If anyone's familiar with that work and using technology as a catalyst, talking about that flywheel and hedgehog concept. And then supportive culture for all. And finally, a focus on student achievement. These 5 subcategories are the areas that we will always have goals on at our building level. So I'm going to show you, again, I don't want to go into too much depth on this, but I do want to show you this. I think the board saw this presentation 5 years ago, and Mr. Dominic, I think we had a conversation about, we had created the 5-year vision and goal sheet, and I kind of showed it, and you said, well, what are you going to do if things change? And I said, well, we'll look at it every year, and if we need to change it, we will. And it's really funny. I wanted to at least pull it up to show you. So here is that sheet from 5 years ago. It really didn't need very much revision at all. So last year in the COVID year, again, we call that the COVID learning year, unfortunately. Remember, we were 5 years out on this, but we had talked about having a math interventionist and working towards a response to learning plan. And down below that, we talked about all teachers having a Google Classroom in grades 2 to 5. Hey, we hit those. Right? Maybe a little unconventionally, but we did get there. It's interesting to watch this, and I've been a believer in this for a long time. If you write down a goal, and it's not just something you write and you put down, but it's actually a working document, more times than not, you will hit that goal. So for our staff, this 5-year vision and goal sheet is in our Google folder. It is one of the documents that I refer to frequently. We have a building leadership team that our staff serves on, and this is our working document. Not only do we have our goals in here, we put all of our student data in here, we put team goals in here. This is what drives us. I'm going to pull up this year's goal sheet because we did revise it into a 3-year. But there are 2 pieces of this that I do really want to focus on. Again, we have our different goal areas that I already talked about with tasks for each year going across. You can see some of the things like mission statement education, WIN implementation, purposeful use of technology. That bottom one is so important, taking care of people. We keep talking about taking care of our students this year and taking care of our staff this year. Everybody went through a very difficult learning year. And to think that we could come back this year and just hit our stride like nothing happened is unrealistic. It's not realistic. So we have a staff activity every month to try and keep everybody in the right mind frame. So we did a ping pong challenge the first month. We brought a ping pong table in. I think it was Mrs. Smith and Mr. Gorecki were our ping pong champions. They were very good. Last month we did a 50-mile challenge, which was an idea we actually got from the high school. And I think we had 19 or 20 staff members complete the 50-mile challenge. So kudos to all of you who did that. They did a great job. And this month we're going to go get lost in the Johnson corn maze. So we're just doing something to just try to keep our staff engaged and together along the way. But the area I want to show you is down below. So let me go here underneath student achievement, I guess. One of the things that we have done at North Grove for a long time is, I've been here for a while, many of you do know that, 13 years. So one of the things I recognized when we first adopted math is I really love math, but math doesn't have the greatest archiving feature. In other words, once you get past certain years, your data kind of falls off. It's really hard to follow trends for cohorts, etc. You can see individual students. It's hard to track grades over time. So we started this chart. This group here now is, what year would they be in school? I think they're juniors in high school or sophomores. They are, they're juniors. They're juniors in high school. So we started this data chart when they were juniors in high school. Basically, we track the bands of math achievement as we go across every year to the different categories of low, low average, average, high average, and then what they call the high group. And what we do is, we've been monitoring this for years. We follow cohorts. We identify when we hit different goals, when we grow different groups. We have a bell ringing process that we use in our day-to-day. So when our teams reach goals and when our building hits goals, we ring a bell and we celebrate that. Every single one of our teams looks at this data along with their math data. They look at their next generation reading assessment, which is basically finding a reading level. We have a core phonics assessment. We look at these different data points, and from that, we create individual team goals based on the student group that we have. So every grade level creates a measurable learning goal based on the data that they're looking at for the cohort of students that they have. So not only are we doing this as a building, but then we're narrowing in and we're doing this as individual teams. One of the things I think I can say I'm very proud of our building on, this is a very data savvy group who knows the importance of taking care of kids, but also knows the importance of results. They have done an amazing job with us over time, and we've watched our data move. We've also watched our data hit a point where the only thing left to do is get more customized with student learning, which brings us back to WIN. The initiative that we have this year with WIN, which is customizing learning for all students, is the next point in the PLC process. In fact, according to Hattie's work, it really is the number 3 major factor in improving student learning. High expectations, which we have. Customizing learning, which we have not been able to do at the level we would want to until now. And then, of course, teacher self-efficacy, which is that belief that they know that they make the difference every single day. So why do I want to show you all this? Because I think sometimes when we get going through a school year, the pictures tell an amazing story of the day-to-day actions, but truthfully, you guys and the public, you don't often get to see the work that goes into the planning phase of good, solid vision and leadership. And this group has been amazing. We have never stood idly by and just said the school year is going to happen. They have always been goal-focused. They have always been goal-oriented. They've always been results-oriented. They've always been kid-focused. And we've never let that slip, even when the challenges get to be pretty high. So I wanted the board to know that even coming back after COVID and being back in the building, we are staying very data-focused. We have our plan for the next 3 years, which we know we may have to look at to revise, but it is focused on data, it is focused on students, and it is results-driven, because we have an amazing group here. So that's my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Brian, I just wanted to thank you. I was lucky enough to attend the Northbrook PTO meeting last night. And you and Mrs. DeVito put on an awesome presentation about WIN. I am super excited about that, and I think I shared that last night about it being more student learning focused and more particular to each student and how they best learn. What I found amazing though is it really dovetailed into a late start Thursday and why we had those. There were some parents in the room that were super excited to hear what we're doing with that time. I'm really glad that it's still being communicated, and I think last night I felt even more it still needs to be communicated more. How we're using that time and what great things are coming out of it.
Yeah, I think the connection to the late starts and win time obviously is one that it will be difficult to do, because unless you do that work, maybe it just doesn't make sense. But essentially, for our families that are here, every late start Thursday, our teachers are meeting with their grade level teams. They pull up a data sheet that has been collected on during the week, during that small group win time. They're looking at students, and they're making decisions on what standards to move to next during that small group win time, and what students need to move. You can think of it as student mix-up day. So if a student is doing really well, let's say the student's name is Johnny, because I love to pick the name Johnny because it's a black mom. Johnny's doing really well. We might move Johnny to a different group. We might move Johnny to a different standard. If the whole group is doing well, we might move on to a different standard. So it is very customized, and Thursday is a very important day. If you could just picture it, picture you are in charge of 20 kids, and they all have a different learning path, but you never have a chance to sit down with your colleagues to then plan what that path's going to look like and who's going to take which kid. That would be impossible. So Thursday is mix-up day. Thursday is we look at data, we move kids around, and we select standards. And it is a very important day. It is a very busy day to get that ready to go for the good work that will take place the following week. And again, that's being put into a video that will be shared out with elementary families so that they just have a strong understanding of what that looks like on Thursday.
I just want to say I think it's really, this presentation just echoes what I think is using data to drive decisions. And I think this just emulates that mantra in such an amazing way. And I'm really proud to see this come out of the Sycamore School and to see students on the receiving end of this student achievement, just the remarkable amount of metrics being used to drive decisions, just at every level, the engagement, the PLCs, the technology, the student achievement. I think that it speaks volumes to what we just in general, in terms of us, a focus towards learning and educating as a whole should focus on is the data, and I think you've really done that here. So I think that's excellent.
Thank you. And I will say this. I think that once you get into a school year, sometimes this work can be hard to do. Because honestly, we start managing. We have to, right? I sub when I have to, which is more often than I had to previously, right? I have to cover the lunchroom, I have to cover recess. My colleagues, the other principals, they're doing the same thing. And so it's very quickly, it's very possible that very quickly you could lose sight of leading and setting vision and working with your staff on future-focused initiatives and just get into a maintenance phase. And you can't do that. If you let that happen, the students suffer, the building suffers, the district suffers. And so we have to stay focused on doing this type of work. I love that I get to meet with my DLT twice a week, and all we talk about is, a majority of the time, is this. All right, let's pull up our document. Where are we at? Where are we at with our tasks? Where are we at with our data? This is very powerful work, and it has to be done, has to be thoughtfully done. Okay.
I think that the real story behind what we just talked about, though, is how our staffing shortages are really impacting us. They're not allowing you to do perhaps your complete job as a principal because you're filling in all these gaps throughout the building. As you shared with me last night, doing lunch on your own because there was no one else to do it. And that worries me about people in positions that should be doing one job that are doing so many others, trying to balance everything this year.
It has been one of our challenges. Again, we're hoping that it's a short-lived challenge, right? All hands on deck right now. Mr. Wilder says it all the time. Right now, all hands on deck. We will get through this. But it is tricky. It is definitely a challenge for us right now.
So as you're aware, in education, often we let things linger on that aren't maybe as relevant anymore or as strong or supportive. So what are the 3 or 4 things at the bottom that we shouldn't be spending our time doing perhaps? That would be good to highlight as well.
Summer vacation, television, and mobility rate of students. So we can get them to not move, not to watch TV, and not go on summer vacation. Those have a negative effect on student learning. I don't think any of those are surprises. There are some other ones that are lower that we have talked about. And those things, those are the ones that have a negative impact on student learning, right? The others don't have a negative impact, they just don't have as much of a positive impact, right? So some of those things are lower on the list, we've talked about those, but the negative ones are summer vacation, television, mobility. Yeah.
Thank you for hosting us, Mr. Janish, and thank you for an enlightening and in-depth presentation. And thanks to your team who are here in force tonight. And thank you for the work you do each and every day, where you actually have an impact on students, not just for a day or for a month or for an academic year, but for their entire life. It's through your efforts that that these students are able to succeed. And thank you for putting in the hard work and time and spending the time with those students to get them to their highest potential. Really appreciate that. It's what makes Sycamore, I think, an all-around great district to be. So appreciate that. So how about a round of applause? Next item then would be Assistant Superintendent for Business Services.
I thought I was going to have all the exciting discussion tonight, but Brian stole my thunder, so. Tonight I just want to give an update on our bond restructuring, which we went into great detail on at the last board meeting. So tonight, just a refresher, we talked about 2 different scenarios of leveling out that debt service levy going forward because we were going to see some huge spikes and we wanted to take care of that for the district and for the taxpayers. So we decided to move forward with scenario 1 there, where we are going to level out our peak debt service at about $7.4 million versus the $10.5 million, which we had anticipated. And so tonight, we are at the point where I would ask the board to pass a resolution for executing up to a certain threshold, depending on where the interest rates fall during our bond sale. And that resolution just authorizes me to move forward with the closing of the sale. So that's what I have tonight, Jim.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution providing for the bond sale as indicated? Any discussion?
No, I want to thank you, Nicole, and the financial advising team for coming up with a way to save the taxpayers $330,000. Appreciate it.
And to keep it at that level level. Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Joe?
Sorry? Yes.
John, sorry.
I thought you said Jim.
Nelson?
Yes.
Red? Yes. David? Yes. Vito?
Yes?
Becca?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Superintendent's report.
I'm going to stand too. I've got a couple of slides, not too long. I just want to thank everybody for sticking around, because usually after the school presentation is over, everybody gets up and leaves, and because the rest of it is pretty dry, so thanks everybody for sticking around. Let's start with a couple of slides that we normally start with during the superintendent's portion of the meeting. Our mission: empowering all learners to succeed in their world. Our vision is to provide an ideal learning experience where students and staff are engaged and want to come back the next day. Some of our core values are respect, digital citizenship, collaboration, equality, integrity. And then the 5 questions that our professional learning communities talk about and discuss on a regular basis. Mr. Janish touched on these a little bit, the PLC work that's going on. What do we want students to know and learn? What do students want to know and learn? How do we know if they've learned it? What will we do if they don't learn it? And what do we do if they already know it? So members of the board know this, members of the audience tonight may or may not know this, but once a month we talk about a future-focused item. And this isn't necessarily an item that we're going to take action on tonight. It's an item that we have some discussion about and just something to kind of keep on our mind as we're making decisions moving forward. I have the fun job of selecting future-focused items, although I'm always open to suggestion. And Kathy knows that sometimes these are very late coming to me, the inspiration that I need. This one came to me very recently, but it touched on something that Michael hit on, Mr. Vito hit on earlier, which is student voice. So I just have a couple of points here that I want to make, and then we'll open it up for discussion. Most decisions in school or school district are made by adults. The Board of Education is asked to make a lot of decisions. The administrators are charged with making decisions at the district level as well as at the building level. Teachers and staff are involved in that process, and parents are involved in that process. But oftentimes, while we gather feedback from students, maybe not on the scale that would allow them to be part of the decision-making process, or at least part of the decision-making process as much as we would like. It can be a very important part of the process. Students have a unique perspective. So in a previous position, students were surveyed at the end of every class. This was at a high school where I was employed at the time. And students had an opportunity to talk about the experience instructionally, classroom management, how things worked throughout the semester or the year, depending on the course. It was always interesting to read those surveys. And it was always very positive. You know, there was always a fear that when you hear what students have to say, sometimes they're going to not be very positive. They're going to be negative. A lot of that feedback was always very positive. Some of it was very interesting. Things that we just didn't always think about because students bring a unique perspective to our classrooms. So that can be an important part of giving student voice. Other possible benefits, increased investment and engagement. If students know that they have a voice, they're a little bit more invested in the process and a little bit more invested in the school. Increased collaboration and partnership. When we have a better understanding of what students know and what they see and what they hear, they can become more partners in the process. It can build trust and mutual respect. It can also have a very positive impact on the culture of the schools. And I'm a big believer that school culture has to come first. The culture within the district has to come first. And if there's a positive culture in the district and in the school, you can accomplish a lot. So why don't schools include student voice more than we do already? So one of the things I just kind of want to say at this point, it's not that we don't include student voice, it's not that we don't listen, it's not that there aren't avenues already in place here in Sycamore, and again, through leadership, some of those. Why don't we do it more than we do? Sometimes we believe that students don't understand the big picture. There are a lot of discussions that happen and decisions that have to get made that maybe we think students don't necessarily understand and have the right perspective in terms of being part of the decision. Students may focus on what they want without necessarily understanding the limitations or the consequences. There are a lot of things that students want, there are a lot of things that staff and the board would like to do, but there are limitations to what we can do. So you have to keep that in mind as you're making decisions. Students may be focused more on the short-term future, not the long-term future. I worked as a teacher in a middle school environment, also worked in a high school before I was a district level administrator. Sometimes we just kind of see so far in front of our face, but we don't necessarily see the long-term or the long-term consequences. Students don't have a financial investment. When you're not paying the bill, it's coming from somebody else, you can really have some great ideas in terms of what you would like. Will students want to be included? And will students take it seriously if they are included? And again, the Spartan Senate, the high school sounds like a great example of students actually taking that very seriously and being part of the process. What does or what could student voice look like? Could be administrator or staff involved in some of the student leadership meetings like Spartan Senate. Could happen at the middle school, could happen at the high school or the K-5 level as well. Participation at Board of Education meetings, building your district committee meetings or other meetings throughout the school district. So again, not necessarily making any recommendations tonight. There are boards of education who have student members on the board. Oftentimes it's one student member who's advisory, doesn't necessarily vote on anything. Doesn't mean they have to be involved at this level, sit at the table. It could be part of the audience. That could rotate, happen a lot of different ways if we wanted to consider doing that. It can happen through surveys, focus groups, and open forums. It can happen through multimedia presentations or submissions. So I've attended a couple of conferences recently, and one of the superintendents who spoke was actually the state superintendent of the year in New York, the superintendent of the school district. And they were dealing with some very difficult questions and decisions in their school district. And one of the things that really made a difference to the board and to the community and to the parents were video submissions that students prepared and that then became available through the district social media website, their YouTube channel, things like that. It was pretty amazing to hear the things, the observations that the students had and were able to share, and in the long run really had a big influence. Even though they weren't present during discussions, present sitting on a board or being part of a board meeting, just having that video to see directly from the students how they felt, what they thought was really powerful. So last slide, again, I'm not making any recommendations tonight, just to highlight some actual potential benefits, actual benefits, including student voice and decision making. Some of the practices here described here are already taking place. Again, I want to reemphasize that. It's not that we're not doing some of these things already. Could they be done differently? Can we build on that? Just some things to think about. And decisions regarding anything additional can be made in the future. So, as always, future focused items are really just about generating some discussion. I take some notes on that. Kathy takes some notes on that, and we can always return to these sorts of things in the future. So that's my last slide. So at this point, I'll open it up for questions or for comments from the board.
I know 2 or 3 years ago, we had a student senate representative from the high school who was in attendance at just about every board meeting. We did have there was a section of time allocated to them on the agenda. I thought that was all very useful and productive. I mean, definitely want to include in future meetings.
I was thinking the same thing. I'd love to see that be at a minimum. because we get some good insights. And it wasn't necessarily always the same student, so they would rotate through that. I concur with the student voice piece as a school architect, that when you're doing a new building or a large addition, often there's different ways that's approached. Sometimes it's the administrators are going to make the decision, and that's the way that district operates. Sometimes it's the board that makes the decision, and that's the way it operates. Sometimes it's a steering committee. And we've always, from our perspective, always said you need to make sure you have students, not only have focus groups and get input, but actually have students on your steering committee. Because you will get good insight. We always end up with at least 2 or 3 things that change how the building functions, how it looked, where something was located because of student input. And sometimes they're, hey, can you put chocolate milk in the drink? I get that when I'm doing elementary, but there are always good insights. So I don't know if you need to go to the extent of someone sitting on board or not, but I would encourage more involvement from the student presentation side of things. I would encourage maybe having some civics-based class and a broad range that would involve them coming to board meetings, participating at some level as well. And I like the idea of the video submissions because sometimes students aren't as comfortable standing in front of the crowd and actually expressing what their thought or opinion is. And they can provide some insights from a perspective like that. It allows them to speak more freely or be more creative. And with the fact that we have Smart TV to partner with on a word like that, something like that, I think that makes a lot of sense. And it gives them another voice.
I was going to say Smart TV, we need to access that. I was just watching middle school today, and that's one of the reasons I ran the board. I just love hearing kids. But, hearing the kids and what they're excited about and what they're doing and just allowing us to see them is wonderful. So, and I know Tim always provided a student to come to the meetings and tell us what was going on in the high school, which was really helpful and informative. And whether it be a video, whether it be the kids in person, to me, that's what we need to be hearing because we want to hear what the teachers have to say. We want to hear what the kids have to say. I'd like to know what the kids are feeling about what they just went through this past year and how they're feeling this year is different or, things like that we need to hear and I think that would be fabulous.
I just know when the board hears from the Spartan Senate, when they come to the conclusions, I think the board will be overly impressed with just the amount of organization and vantage points that it has, just in terms of parents, teachers, students, the high level of organization on topics. I mean, you'd have thought we were at like a Model UN thing. I mean, there were placards with everyone's name on it. Like you had to be on. This was, if you haven't had an opportunity to attend the Spartan Senate meeting, in terms of the general public, as far as being a stakeholder, we really should because it was excellent. And I really think a crown jewel in terms of what Sycamore is doing to bring in student voices. I was very, very impressed. But I would absolutely echo the statements of always ushering more involvement. But I think Spartan Senate really is a slam dunk for Sycamore in terms of checking that box.
I was in the past, and I know Mr. Davidson did too, so you were always welcome.
Always like the Spartan Senate concept because it does give the students an opportunity to make a difference. Sometimes I think the students feel that they're just coming to the state of opinion and not having as big an impact as they possibly could have. So this way they can interact presented, and then we can get from the finished product as involves all that also learn the process.
Oh yeah, and noticing about teachers were weighing in on issues, parents were weighing in, so it was just really nice just to see that sort of exchange of ideas just happen in real time. And then it culminated into what I thought was a productive outcome, so it's building up. So again, eventually, I'm assuming there will be a presentation to the board, and I think that will really demonstrate.
I think just having this kind of conversation together, will spark a conversation maybe about what it look like as part of the Senate. But also the about what to do. So, yeah, there's some room for discussion.
Hopefully, the younger is given short, part of time. Part of the house. Give them all short.
Next item then is open discussion and future agenda items. Anything for the agendas that we'll already have on the list? Is there a motion to go into executive session for the consideration of matters related to the appointment of personnel, purchase or lease of real estate negotiations? Second, roll call.
Neal?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Brett? Dave? Summit?
All right, we're back in open session. Is there a motion to approve the personnel report as presented? So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, roll call.
Brett? Davey?
Yes.
Vito?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Summit?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Is that it?